wind 0907, clear takeoff 07 right.
Clear takeoff runway 07 right, Singapore is 61.
Welcome to the third episode of the Canadian Aviator. In this video we will talk about the Certificate of Airworthiness, one of those documents you will need to go flying. Whether you are simply interested in aviation, or you are seeking to obtain your Canadian commercial pilot license, or you are studying for your practical or written exam, this video is for you. Be sure to watch to the end, as I will be sharing questions similar to the one that you may encounter on any written or practical exam. The Certificate of Airworthiness. Usually you will find it inside a binder or pouch in the airplane. You are required to have it with you in the plane for every flight, and it must be valid. This type of certificate states that the airplane is airworthy. The Certificate of Airworthiness has many different parts: the registration of the aircraft manufacturer, the model, the aircraft serial number, the category that the aircraft that has been registered for, which could be normal or utility, for example, which I will cover in one of my future videos. A valid COA comes with the signature of the Transport Canada Minister with the official seal. In the case of a home-built airplane, you would have either a flight permit or a flight authority for test purposes instead of a COA. On your flight test, the examiner will likely pick one of those documents you are required to have with you in flight, and you have to be able to recognize which one is the COA and know all of its details. How long is the COA valid for? It depends upon a number of maintenance-related items. Let's go over some of those situations that would invalidate the COA. As far as the required equipment is on board, serviceable and functioning, the COA is valid. When I say required equipment on board, that depends on the type of flying you are doing. Let's imagine you are flying day VFR. In that case, you have to use the appropriate equipment for day VFR. We will talk about it in more details in one of my next videos, Aircraft Equipment section. Appropriate equipment includes, for example, magnetic compass, airspeed indicator, altimeter, timepiece, etc. You need to make sure that the correct equipment is on board for the type of flying you are doing. Of course, you always have to have your emergency equipment, such as a first aid kit, the fire extinguisher, and all must be serviceable and functioning. The second item that could invalidate the Certificate of Airworthiness is not following the inspection cycle. There are different maintenance cycles for private and commercial use. In the video about commercial maintenance standards, we will go into greater details about it. If your airplane has not been maintained according to that specific cycle, that would invalidate the COA. Another thing that could invalidate the COA is a defect. Imagine you go out there, you taxi into position, and you discover that your oil pressure gauge is not working. In that case, the oil pressure gauge is part of the minimum equipment required to fly day VFR. So you will need to taxi back, write an entry in the journey log as a snag, and then go tell the mechanic that the gauge is not working. You cannot fly that airplane until the mechanic signs that maintenance release. Once the maintenance release is signed, then your aircraft is airworthy again and your COA is valid once more. Another situation that could invalidate the COA is something called the Airworthiness Directive. In this case, that is almost like the recall of an automobile. It's not quite the same, but it's pretty close. Let's say that Cessna discovers that something is wrong with their 152 fleet. In that case, what they would do is actually send out a letter to everyone that owns a 152 saying that this item must be fixed. They would also put a deadline for these repairs in the letter. It could be after the next annual inspection or within the next few hours the aircraft is flown. Regardless of the severity, you cannot fly that airplane if you do not comply with that Airworthiness directive. Who can sign off an AD? Only a certified mechanic can fix and sign a release saying that that AD was complied with. When you buy a new aircraft, one of the things the mechanic does is go through that long list of ADs for that particular airplane, checking that all those previous ADs were complied with. In the POH or Pilot Operating Handbook, which I will cover as well in one of my next videos, you have a section called Limitations. If you fly outside of those limitations, you will automatically invalidate the COA. For example, if you accidentally leave the flaps extended on your DA-20 and you are cruising at 110 knots with those flaps down, you are going outside those limitations and you have to tell the mechanic to have a look at the flaps. Another section of the POH is the weight and balance section. If you fly the airplane outside the envelope, you will invalidate the COA. I just mentioned a couple of limitations, but the entire POH has limits you should never cross. Where an aircraft is operating under a foreign flight authority, the minister shall validate the foreign flight authority, thereby authorizing the operation of the aircraft in Canadian airspace. Where an application for a flight authority is made in respect to an aircraft being ported, the applicant must comply with the importation requirements specified in the Airworthiness manual. The annual Airworthiness report is not legally required to be on board the aircraft in order to go flying. It's a form that the owner submits to Transport Canada on a yearly basis. This document is simply a method for Transport Canada to keep track of how often the airplane flies in any given year. If the owner doesn't submit the yearly report by the 30th of March of the following year, the owner will receive a fine. This ends the video regarding the certificate of Airworthiness. Let's go through some questions regarding the COA that Transport Canada may ask during any exam. A jet weighing 74,956 pounds may not take off on a noise-restricted runway unless which of the following documents is in force? A certificate of airworthiness certifying the airplane meets the applicable noise emission standards. B. A document from the manufacturer confirming the noise level. C. A document from the airport authority approving the operation. Or D. An Environment Canada document approving the noise level. The correct answer is A. A certificate of airworthiness certifying the airplane meets the applicable noise emission standards. Next question. No person shall fly an airplane unless the equipment therein meets the applicable standards of airworthiness. How do you know the equipment meets those standards and where is the information maintained? A. The technical log advices of standards and serviceability. The aircraft owner keeps tracks of the minimum equipment list. B. Any unserviceabilities are listed in the journey log. The minimum equipment list is maintained by the aircraft's engineer. C. All unserviceabilities should be signed off in the journey log by an AME, and the equipment list on the minimum list is checked as serviceable by the pilots in the pilot's pre-flight checks. Or D. Pilots are not required to know this information. The correct answer is C. All unserviceabilities should be signed off in the journey log by an AME, and the equipment list on the minimum list is checked as serviceable by the pilot in the pilot's pre-flight checks. Next question. Where a minimum equipment list is not provided, a pilot may not take off for which of the following reasons? A. The standards of airworthiness have not been met. B. The equipment list required by the manufacturer is not on board. C. The equipment does not conform to the owner's policies. Or D. The equipment required by an airworthiness directive is not on board. The correct answer is A. The standards of airworthiness have not been met. Next question. Under what airworthiness conditions may an airplane be flown? A. The airplane must be maintained in a serviceable condition. B. All airworthiness directives for the aircraft must have been actioned. C. All service bulletins must be noted. Or D. The fuel tanks must be checked for contamination. The correct answer is B. All airworthiness directives for the aircraft must have been actioned. Next and last question for this video. Can an aircraft owner be exempt from an airworthiness directive? A. No. B. Yes. C. Yes, but only if the owner can establish that the airworthiness directive is impractical or unnecessary and that safety will not be compromised. Or D. Aircraft owners should not even try for exemptions. They are more work than the airworthiness directives themselves. The correct answer is C. Yes, but only if the owner can establish that the airworthiness directive is impractical or unnecessary and that safety will not be compromised. If you find this video beneficial or if you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. For now, fly safe, stay tuned, and thanks for watching.